We're back again, and we have a very beautiful young lady that has been on before. I'm sure you remember her. She's a wonderful artist and a wonderful writer. Gail Daley. Hi, Gail. I'm
Hi,
so glad
Carol.
to have you back.
I'm glad to be back.
When I saw that, I said, "Oh, Gail's going to come." I know you. I don't know how you have the time to write all these wonderful books.
Well, I haven't done a lot of painting, although I did do some painting of some of the critters that appear in these books, in the Handfasting books that I entered. I entered them in the Clovis's miniature art show.
Oh, that's what I want to. I want to get into that next one because I got so much small art.
Well, it was at Clovis Library, and one of the paintings, the one I did of the dactyls, actually got an honorable mention on it.
Oh.
Which is unusual because, generally speaking, a lot of judges really, they don't know what they're looking at to begin with, and they don't know it's supposed to look that way. So it's hard for them to judge.
Yeah.
To judge it as to the merits of it. But these two books, this one is out of my Portal World Tales, and I actually have two series in that. One of them, this series, is pure fantasy, and I just got my author's copies from this one this week, and it is
what is it? Spell
of the Magi.
Magi.
Yeah, it's the as you know, the portal worlds, they went through I guess you could call it a gate, and these people, the world that they landed in wasn't quite like the universe was different a little bit because it responds a lot more to mental images, and it has a lot more of what they call the ley lines that, they talk about them here on Earth, but we don't really have them.
Yeah.
But this one is called the Magi series. It has a sequel planned, but I haven't done it yet, which is going to be called Magi Storm, which actually takes off from one of the young ladies in this book and one of the what they call the wild Magi, and they are basically they're rebels. They refuse to conform to anything and everything, and they're very powerful, so they can get away with it without having to deal with it. And in that particular universe, we start off with a girl named Rebecca, who she's the oldest daughter, so she is the heir to the kingdom of Ireland. Ireland. Yeah. And but if you're not registered with the state for the Magi, then you're in trouble. You have basically two things: you can hide from them, or you can register with them. But if you're registered with them, you have to do what they say. You have to marry who they say. You have to live where they say, so on and so on and so forth. And her family doesn't believe in that.
Oh.
So they've been hiding from them for centuries, really. And her grandfather actually is the head of the spy network for that area. And what he does is he travels around and he's setting up and getting messages and all this kind of stuff. Well, they're out, but they're beginning to be recognized. So he had his oldest daughter, who was Rebecca's mother. They came in. The Magi came in and took her. And despite the fact that she was married with 3 children and a fourth on the way, and they took her. Her husband was wounded. When he got better, he went after her, but they basically disappeared. But there was a rumor going around that that she had actually had the child she was carrying, and that she had managed to smuggle the baby out of their compound.
Wow!
So they were looking for her. Anyway, Rebecca ends up while they're traveling around. They're like kind of like a gypsy wagon, the traveling snake oil salesman used to come to the western towns and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was attacked by some bigwig in the town who thought that because they were travelers that the women ought to be a little more free with their favors. Anyway, her younger sister whacked him over the head with a shovel. Her grandfather and her brother were both gone from the wagons. Grandfather had gone into town to get supplies before they left, and her younger brother was over visiting the station master's daughter because he was kind of sweet on her. Mm-hmm. But anyway, when they got back, they found that the guy was out cold, and Rebecca had burned him with some fire magic. Wow. Well, I mean, he's on top of you, and you're not going to be able to get away from him unless you do something like that. He's big, outweighs you by about 150 pounds or whatever, So, and then of course, Katrin, that was her sister, whacked him with a shovel and knocked him out. So anyway, they pack up real quick and they go, but the guy puts a wanted flyer out on them. Uh-oh. And he knows that they're magic users, so he includes that with it, which means the proctors are after them. Uh-oh. So they're sneaking around as far away as they can, and this wounded mercenary comes into camp, and the mercenaries are free soldiers, and they are independent of any one kingdom. But he's, he got in a fight in a town, and he was, and he had to leave in a hurry because the guy said he was cheating at dice, so he killed him, and so he ran. Anyway, he got clipped on the head by a branch when he was running through the forest trying to get away from him, knocked him out. Anyway, he shows up at their camp, and he falls off his horse basically into her, and he doesn't have his memory right away. He's lost his memory because of the blow in the head. So the grandfather, who's a really conniving old, he says, okay. When the guy wakes up, he says, don't you know who you are? And then he tells him he's engaged to Rebecca, and that they don't know much about him because he just showed up a couple of weeks ago in camp, and they don't know what happened to him either, and so on and so on and so forth. Well, Rebecca, basically, she is terrified of having a man touch her anymore because of what happened. So, but she finally, her grandfather manages to talk her into going along with it, and so they basically they're traveling through the countryside, and you get to see it, and they end up at Ireland, and then it's a big keep. Now, the scientists who originally came through the gate, they were physics and all this kind of stuff, so they knew how to make gates. So they created 7 of them where they could go to other countries or whatever, other things. And one of them was in Ireland. But Rebecca's family had been in charge of taking care of it. But they ended up having to flee back to it. And someone else had to take over over the spy thing. Anyway, they're there, and they have this big confrontation with the what they call the proctors, which are basically the king's Magi. Oh. Anyway, they're using the ley lines and stuff and all this kind of, and it was a lot of fun to write.
I bet it's got a lot of things going on.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. Well, like I said, I didn't really end up. I would have been too long if I tried to include Katrin's story in it and the brother's story in it too. So they're going to be the next 2 books in that particular series. This one right here, this came out, I believe. It was out the last time I was here on your story, but I included it, brought it with me because the 5th one that I'm working on now, which is To Love and Honor, isn't out yet. I have the cover done, which showed up on those. It's blonde with the gun there. This one over here.
Okay.
That is Lucinda, and she is a policewoman on. She's grown up. You first saw her as a child in the very first book. She was one of Lady Catherine's adopted daughters. And she becomes a policewoman. And this was kind of a cozy mystery. That's a little more akin to a police procedure because it has to do with her job and all this kind of stuff. And there's a couple murders that she has to deal with. And then there's of course, her boyfriend, which she meets in this book, is private investigator. So he works. They're working kind of opposite ends of this case, and you get to. I went into a little more detail on some of the alien races in the next book than I did in this one. it's you get to see a little more of what how the world actually works there on the planet and all this kind of stuff. This one right here is out now, and I forgot to mention this one is on special. The ebook is for 99 cents on Amazon.
Oh my gosh!
And it's going to stay that way probably until the next until I get the fifth one of this ready up and
The
going.
thing that strikes me most of all is your imagination. I mean, it's a sort of a thing like the guy that wrote the Oz books. How the imagination keeps going and going on. And that's the way I would never be able to think up one of them, and you're thinking of book after book of really interesting stories.
As a child, I always put myself into, I guess my mother called it daydreaming, but one of the neatest things about writing these kind of books is you put yourself into this world that you create, and then they become friends to you, and it's like people you know. And I've had people that I'm telling about my book say, I thought those were real people. Because they didn't quite catch the fact that I made them up, that they were books, So, but yeah, that is.
Well, I love to have you on because you always have such interesting stories, and these books are beautiful. The covers are beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm sure the inside of them is even better than the covers.
They're fun to read. They
Yes,
are.
okay.
I actually did the covers for those myself. These are they're photographs that I there's a really neat site called Shutterstock where you can download if you pay a feed, you can download 5 images and you can use that.
Oh.
And you can use photos like that. You have to be able to do your own altering and photoshopping in Photoshop to get that kind of a thing. And it's been more difficult since we switched over to the Mac, because the Mac didn't the Photoshop program that came for it doesn't have the kind of bells and whistles and controls that my old program on the PC had, and I don't even know if the new Photoshop on the PC would behave the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, I've had a lot of Photoshop problems. Anyway, I'm so glad you come in.
Well, thank
come
you.
in again, because I always have such a fun time when you come in and tell me about what you're newly created. Okay, and thank you for being such a good friend.
Oh, well, thank you too.
Okay. Well, this is, I think, our last guest for today, but come on next Thursday, and we'll have another wonderful show. Bye-bye.